This is one reason why so many people feel like their body is fighting them. And instead of asking what's broken in the system, society points the finger at the human, saying they just need more discipline or better willpower. Bullshit. What's up, you beautiful beasts? In this video, we're talking about the meds that have completely taken over the internet. Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound, the ones that everyone seems to be fighting about, freaking out over, or secretly wondering if they should try. And I'm sure you've heard the claims: miracle shots, dangerous fads, celebrity cheats, and the diet industry's new favorite toy. But underneath all the noise, there's real science, and it's way more interesting than the headlines. Because these medications aren't magic, and they're not new. They're just based on a natural hormone that your body's been using for decades to regulate hunger, blood sugar, and inflammation, a word that gets used to scare people, but here we're talking about long-term metabolic inflammation, not normal healthy inflammation. Long before the hashtags ever showed up. So buckle up, because this one's beefy. We're talking hormones, hype, headlines, and a whole lot of science. The kind that actually makes sense when you hear it out loud. This is a long one, so I added chapters to make it easy to skip ahead, rewind, or nerd out at your own pace. In this video, we're cutting through the noise to talk about what GLP-1 medications actually do in your body, what happens when that system breaks down, why the diet industry hijacked them, and what the research really says about their safety, side effects, and long-term impact. Let's get into it. Disclaimer: I am not a medical provider and I'm definitely not a GLP-1 expert. I don't prescribe medication, and nothing in this video should replace professional medical advice or treatment. I'm also not an influencer trying to sell you GLP-1s or push affiliate junk. That's not what I do, and that's not what this channel stands for. I study what's trending in health and fitness to keep my coaching practice evidence-based, because if it's shaping a conversation around health, I want to understand it. My goal is to help you cut through the noise, make sense of the science, and base your choices on facts, not fear. For context, I'm Katie Impian, an NASM certified personal trainer, certified nutritionist, and master neurotransformational results coach. I help people rebuild their relationships with food, movement, and themselves through evidence-based science and mindset work. I'm not here to diagnose or prescribe, just to help you understand your own body and the research so that you can make informed, empowered choices. What GLP-1 is and how it works. Alright, so let's start from the top. What even is a GLP-1? GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, which sounds like something you'd learn about in a biochemistry class that you didn't sign up for, but in plain English, GLP-1 is a natural hormone that your body already makes, mostly in your gut, specifically in little cells called L cells that live in your small intestine. These L cells are kind of like tiny sensors in your gut lining that react every time you eat. When food shows up, they send out chemical messages, including GLP-1, to let the rest of your body know that it's mealtime and to start managing digestion, blood sugar, and appetite. Think of GLP-1 as your body's built-in traffic cop for food, sugar, and appetite. Every time you eat, your gut releases GLP-1 into your bloodstream. Once it's out there, it starts doing several really important jobs all at once. It tells your pancreas to release insulin when your blood sugar starts to rise. It tells your liver to chill out on pumping out glucose. It slows down how fast food leaves your stomach, which is called gastric emptying, which keeps you feeling full longer. And it even talks to your brain to reduce appetite and cravings. So basically, GLP-1 helps your body recognize that it has enough fuel and can settle into a calm, regulated state after eating. It's a hormone of balance that helps everything work together smoothly. Now, here's where the medication comes in, because this is the part that gets confusing online. When people say they're on a GLP-1, they're not actually injecting the natural hormone. Your body already makes that. What they're taking are GLP-1 receptor agonists, drugs that mimic the effects of your natural GLP-1. The word agonist just means activator. These medications attach to the same receptors that your body's own GLP-1 would and flip on the same biological switches, like controlling insulin, slowing digestion, and reducing appetite. The key difference? Your natural GLP-1 only lasts a couple minutes before it gets broken down by an enzyme called DPP-4. Think of it like a cleanup crew that works too fast. But these medications are designed to hang out in your body much longer, anywhere from a day to a week, so the side effects stick around instead of disappearing in 5 minutes. So no, these meds don't increase your GLP-1 levels, they don't make your body produce more of it. They're lookalikes that keep the GLP-1 system active longer, which can help restore some of the balance that's often missing in people with type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, or other metabolic conditions. And if all of that felt like too many moving parts, don't even worry, because here's what it looks like when you zoom out and simplify it. In the simplest terms, GLP-1 helps your body coordinate what needs to happen after you eat, signals your pancreas to release insulin when blood sugar rises, tells your liver to hold back on releasing extra glucose, slows down how quickly food leaves your stomach, and sends fullness cues to your brain. All of this works together to keep your appetite, digestion, and blood sugar steady. GLP-1 medications don't replace your natural hormone, and they don't make your body produce more of it. They simply activate the same receptors for a longer period of time, keeping that post-meal signaling active in people whose GLP-1 response is weak or delayed. When the GLP-1 signal breaks down. Alright, so now that we know what GLP-1 is supposed to do when everything's running smoothly, let's talk about what happens when that system starts to glitch. Remember those L cells in your gut, the little hormone factories that send out GLP-1 every time you eat? Over time, those cells can get tired, damaged, or just stop showing up to work. Chronic inflammation in the gut, long-term high blood sugar, stress, and even aging can wear them down. When the gut lining is chronically irritated or the microbiome is out of balance, which is a situation often called leaky gut, the L cells become less responsive to meals and GLP-1 signaling weakens. And sometimes it's even written into your DNA. Certain genetic variations can make people naturally less efficient at producing or responding to GLP-1. And for a lot of folks living with obesity, insulin resistance, or type 2 diabetes, studies show that their GLP-1 response is already blunted. They make less of it, and their receptors don't listen to it as well when it shows up. So here's what that looks like in real life. When your GLP-1 signal is weak, your pancreas doesn't get the release insulin message on time. Your liver keeps cranking out glucose even though you've just eaten, your stomach empties too fast, and you get hungry again way sooner. Your brain gets left out of the loop, so that signal that you're full never really registers. Now you've got a perfect storm. Blood sugar spikes, energy crashes, non-stop cravings, and that frustrating feeling that your metabolism has switched to chaos mode. And the worst part? That same cycle, blood sugar swings, chronic metabolic stress, and long-term inflammation, not the helpful kind, keeps damaging the system that's supposed to fix it. It's kind of like trying to put out a fire while your hose is melting. This is one reason why so many people feel like their body is fighting them. And instead of asking what's broken in the system, society points the finger at the human, saying they just need more discipline or better willpower. Bullshit. But this isn't a character flaw, it's a communication problem. The messages between your gut, pancreas, liver, and brain are dropping like bad text signals. That's where GLP-1 receptor agonist medications come in. They don't replace your natural GLP-1, they mimic it and boost the signal that your body's struggling to send. For people whose GLP-1 system has gone quiet, these meds act like a megaphone. Suddenly, the body starts hearing those messages again. Release insulin, slow digestion, calm the hunger signals. And here's the thing. A sluggish GLP-1 system doesn't mean your body's broken. It means that it's overloaded. Long-term stress, poor sleep, nutrient gaps, and ongoing low-grade immune stress can all weaken the signal. Supporting gut health, eating balanced meals with enough protein and fiber, strength training, and calming the system back down are what help your natural GLP-1 do its job. Why GLP-1 matters. Now that we've walked through how GLP-1 itself works, let's talk about why this hormone and signaling system matters in real life. And no, not in a shiny, headline-grabbing way, in a why does my body feel so hard to live in sometimes kind of way. GLP-1 isn't a medication. It's a built-in communication system that your body uses every single day. And when that system is working well, life inside your body feels less chaotic. You're not stuck on the blood sugar roller coaster of spikes, crashes, and random hunger that makes you feel like your body has a personal vendetta against you. Energy steadies out, focus comes back online. You eat and actually feel satisfied instead of mentally negotiating with yourself afterward. This has nothing to do with willpower or discipline. It's about your body and your body exchanging information clearly instead of constantly dropping the signal. GLP-1 signaling also quietly supports some of your most important systems over time. It helps reduce the chronic, low-grade physiological stress that builds up when blood sugar regulation is off and appetite signals are mismatched. That long-term stress is a big contributor to insulin resistance, cardiovascular strain, and that foggy, run-down feeling so many people have been taught to normalize. When GLP-1 signaling is intact, blood vessels respond more appropriately. Vascular function improves, and the heart simply doesn't have to work as hard to keep everything moving. And what makes GLP-1 especially fascinating is where it shows up. Receptors aren't just in the gut and pancreas. They're found in the heart, kidneys, and brain. That tells us this hormone isn't just about digestion. It's about whole body coordination. In the brain, GLP-1 plays a role in mood, learning, and memory, which is why researchers are studying its signaling in conditions like depression, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. In the reproductive system, improved insulin sensitivity and hormonal signaling help explain why research is showing benefits related to PCOS, cycle regulation, and fertility markers. These effects are not about shrinking bodies. They're about systems communicating properly again. This is why calling GLP-1 a weight loss hormone completely misses the point. Weight changes can happen, yeah, but they're often downstream of regulation happening first. The real story is balance. Blood sugar that stays steadier, appetite signals that make sense, hormones that aren't constantly overcorrecting, and a metabolism that responds instead of reacts. When your GLP-1 system is doing its job, you're not locked in a daily power struggle with your body. Hunger feels trustworthy again. Energy is more predictable. Focus comes back. Things feel less dramatic and honestly less exhausting. It's not about one big flashy change. It's a system that finally stops arguing with itself. And when that core signal starts landing where it's supposed to, everything else adjusts. That's why GLP-1 matters.
GLP-1 medications, Ozempic, Wegovy, etc.
All right, let's talk about the medications that completely hijacked the internet. You know the ones: Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. The names that show up in headlines, celebrity interviews, and definitely your group chat. But first, we need to clean up the name chaos because half of the confusion online is just branding. Ozempic and Wegovy are the same molecule, semaglutide. Same drug, different doses, different FDA labels. Ozempic was approved for type 2 diabetes. Wegovy was approved for chronic weight management. Same engine, different trim package. And yes, before anyone corrects me in the comments, I've heard semaglutide pronounced about 6 different ways. Semaglutide, semaglutide. I'm sticking with semaglutide because it sounds confident, and I fully accept that someone will tell me I'm wrong. Cool. If needles aren't your thing, semaglutide also exists as a pill called Rybelsus. Same mechanism, taken orally, approved for diabetes. It has to be taken very specifically to work properly, but it's an important option for people who want a non-injectable version. Now let's talk about the meds that really shifted the conversation: Mounjaro and Zepbound. These both contain tirzepatide, and this is where things get extra sciencey, but in a fun way. Tirzepatide is what's called a dual agonist. It activates GLP-1 and another hormone called glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide, or GIP. Yes, I'm saying the whole name because it sounds smart and because it matters. GIP is another gut hormone involved in insulin release, energy storage, and appetite signaling. When GLP-1 and GIP work together, they tend to produce stronger and more consistent effects on blood sugar regulation and appetite control than GLP-1 alone. Think of GIP as GLP-1's metabolic co-pilot. GLP-1 handles appetite and glucose timing, while GIP helps fine-tune insulin response and energy use. That's why, for many people, tirzepatide leads to greater improvements in metabolic markers. Mounjaro is approved for type 2 diabetes, and Zepbound is the version approved for chronic weight management. And just to show how fast this field is evolving, researchers are already working on what's next. One of the most talked about drugs in trials right now is retatrutide. Retatrutide is a triple agonist, meaning it activates GLP-1, glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide, and glucagon receptors. It's not FDA approved yet, but early research shows powerful effects on metabolic regulation that go well beyond weight alone. This one's still in the lab, but it gives us a glimpse of where the science is headed. There's also a lot of buzz around a new oral medication called orforglipron. I think I said it right. Unlike Rybelsus, which is a peptide, orforglipron is a small molecule, non-peptide GLP-1 receptor agonist. Translation: it's a once-daily pill that doesn't require the strict timing rules and may behave more like injectable GLP-1 medications in the body. It's still in clinical trials, but early data suggests meaningful effects on blood sugar and weight, which could seriously change if it gets approved. Now, all of these medications were designed for two primary purposes: managing type 2 diabetes and supporting chronic weight management in people who meet medical criteria. Right now, that's usually defined using BMI cutoffs, typically a BMI of 30 or higher, or 27 with at least one related condition like insulin resistance, hypertension, or high cholesterol. And quick pause here, because you know how I feel about BMI. It's a screening tool, not a diagnosis, and tells us exactly nothing about behavior, health, habits, muscle mass, or metabolic function. I have a whole separate video breaking down why BMI is deeply flawed and often misused, so if you want to go deeper into that, I'll link it here. Or here. I never know where it goes. That said, BMI is still what insurance companies and regulatory bodies use to determine access right now, whether we like it or not. The important part is this: these medications were not created for cosmetic weight loss or a few vanity pounds. They're medical tools designed to treat real metabolic dysfunction, improve health outcomes, and reduce long-term disease risk. When it comes to dosing, the most important rule is kind of boring but essential: start low and go slow. These medications change digestion, appetite signaling, and insulin release. If you rush it, your gut will absolutely let you know it's unhappy. That's where most of the horror stories come from. Proper titration gives your body time to adapt, and for most people, that makes a massive difference in tolerability. On their own, GLP-1 medications don't usually cause low blood sugar because insulin release is glucose dependent, meaning insulin only gets released when blood sugar is actually high. The risk goes up when GLP-1s are combined with insulin or sulfonylureas, which are an older class of diabetes medications that tell the pancreas to release insulin whether or not the blood sugar is high. So now you've got multiple signals pushing insulin at the same time. That's not inherently dangerous, but it does require proper medical oversight and dose adjustments to keep things safe. There are also important safety considerations. These medications aren't recommended during pregnancy or when actively trying to conceive. They're contraindicated for anyone with a personal or family history of medullary thyroid carcinoma or multiple endocrine neoplasia type 2. And because they slow digestion, people with significant gastrointestinal conditions need individualized guidance. So the big picture is this: semaglutide, tirzepatide, and what's coming next aren't shortcuts or hacks. They're the results of decades of research into how the body regulates metabolism. They work by restoring signaling between systems that stopped communicating well. Used appropriately, they improve Used appropriately, they improve blood sugar control, support cardiovascular health, and quiet the constant mental noise around food. They're tools, powerful ones. And like any powerful tool, they work best when they're used with respect, patience, and context.
Beyond diabetes and weight loss.
All right, this is where we need to clear up one of the biggest misunderstandings floating around right now. The idea that GLP-1 based medications are just weight loss shots. These drugs didn't start as a body size experiment. Yes, they've been studied for over 20 years and were originally developed for type 2 diabetes, but what caught researchers' attention wasn't weight loss at first. It was the fact that people on these medications were getting healthier in ways that didn't neatly fit into a calories in, calories out story. Blood pressure improved, markers of metabolic stress dropped, liver function looked better, certain brain signals changed, and a lot of this was happening before the scale even moved in a meaningful way. That's the part that made scientists stop and say, okay, something bigger is going on here. That's when the research really expanded. Not because anyone was chasing a miracle drug, but because GLP-1 signaling was clearly affecting more systems than originally expected. And if you want to nerd out with me, I've linked the full GLP-1 research PDF with everything I've looked at, the strong studies, the weak ones, and even the crappy ones, so that you can see how conclusions actually get formed. And if you don't know how to read a scientific study, click here, or here, or here. So let's start with the heart. In people with type 2 diabetes who already have a high risk for cardiovascular disease, GLP-1 based therapies are associated with fewer heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular deaths. What's important here is that these benefits don't line up perfectly with weight loss. Researchers think that the improvements are tied to better blood vessel function, reduced oxidative stress, and healthier signaling within the vascular system. In other words, the pipes themselves start working better, not just the number on the scale. Studies suggest slower progression of chronic kidney disease in the people using the GLP-1 therapies. And that appears to come from improved blood flow regulation inside the kidneys and less metabolic strain on the filtering system. Again, these changes show up even when weight loss is modest. In people with heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, which basically means that the heart can still pump blood out normally, but it's still too stiff to fill up properly, especially those who also have obesity, GLP-1 therapy has been linked to improved symptoms and better exercise tolerance. Some of that improvement likely comes from changes in body weight, but researchers also point to effects on the nervous system and improved blood vessel function as key contributors. The liver data is honestly one of the most interesting parts of this whole story. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, now often called MASH, is incredibly common and a lot of people don't even know why they have it. What researchers are seeing is that GLP-1 signaling can reduce fat buildup in the liver and improve markers of liver stress. Weight loss can help with that, sure, but what's important here is that many of these improvements show up beyond what weight change alone would explain. In other words, the liver itself starts functioning better, not just because the body got smaller, but because the metabolic signaling improved. Sleep is another really interesting arena. In clinical trials, people with sleep apnea showed improvements in breathing disruptions during sleep while on GLP-1 based therapies. Some of that likely comes from changes around the airway, but there's also evidence pointing to improved airway tone and reduced tissue irritation that affects breathing mechanics. And this isn't just theoretical anymore. Tirzepatide, marketed as Zepbound, has recently received FDA approval for the treatment of obstructive sleep apnea in adults with obesity. That approval matters because it tells us that regulators saw consistent, meaningful improvements in sleep outcomes, not just changes on a scale. And then there's the brain, which is honestly one of the most fascinating pieces of this puzzle. GLP-1 receptors are spread throughout areas involved in mood, reward, learning, and memory. Again, that's why researchers are exploring GLP-1 signaling in conditions like depression, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Studies suggest the brain becomes better at using energy. The immune system inside the brain calms down, and levels of brain-derived neurotropic factor increase, which supports neuron health, learning, and adaptability. Early research is also looking at addictive behaviors. GLP-1 signaling appears to dampen excessive dopamine-driven reward responses, which might explain why reductions in cravings for alcohol, nicotine, and other substances are being observed in early studies. It doesn't shut down pleasure, it turns down the volume on compulsive seeking. People also report changes in pain levels, joint stiffness, and brain fog. That's likely tied to how GLP-1 influences immune signaling pathways and the brain's immune cells, helping calm systems that have been stuck in an overactive state for a long time. Reproductive health is another emerging area. In people with PCOS and menstrual irregularities, GLP-1 signaling improves insulin and leptin sensitivity, which can help normalize hormonal rhythms and support ovulation. Some studies even suggest improved endometrial receptivity, meaning a healthier environment for implantation. And again, a lot of these changes show up even when weight isn't the main thing changing. So when people call GLP-1 therapies just weight loss drugs, they're not exactly wrong, but they're missing the bigger picture. Weight changes can happen, yes, but often they're downstream of improved metabolic coordination, not the primary mechanism. What GLP-1 signaling really seems to do is help the systems communicate more effectively. Blood sugar regulation improves, appetite signals become clearer, organs experience less metabolic strain, and the body stops overcorrecting and starts responding more appropriately. It's less about shrinking people and more about restoring balance. Not a magic fix, not a miracle, just a system that finally starts working the way it was designed to. When one key signal comes back online, a lot of the other systems quietly follow. And that's the part worth paying attention to.
Why people are so divided.
Alright, now that we've covered the science, let's get into the drama. Because damn, this topic has more emotional baggage than a reality TV reunion.
GLP-1s aren't just medications anymore. They've become symbols. To some, they're hope in a syringe. To others, they're betrayal in a syringe. And both sides are kinda right, depending on what lens you're looking through. So let's start with the diet culture grab. The second the weight loss results hit headlines, the diet industry pounced like it had just found its next miracle cleanse. Suddenly, the same companies that sold detox teas and 1,200-calorie meal plans were whisper marketing semaglutide as modern biohack. They took something originally designed to heal a broken metabolic system and twisted it into another shrink your body fast campaign. Because if there's money in body dissatisfaction, you better believe that diet culture is going to monetize it. That move freaked out the body positivity and intuitive eating world. And honestly, rightfully so. For decades, they've been the only ones saying, hey, maybe people deserve respect and healthcare no matter what their size. Then, along comes the next diet trend, dressed in a lab coat, and suddenly we're back to before and after photos and summer body rhetoric. So when they see GLP-1s being sold as quick fixes, it feels like betrayal. It looks like the same oppression, just with better branding. The meds themselves aren't diet culture, they're biology. What is diet culture is what happened next. Influencers and celebrities hijacking the story, turning a medical treatment into a body trend. And once that happened, all nuance went out the window. And then there's the media chaos. One minute it's Ozempic is a miracle, and then next it's Ozempic made me blind. Reporters cherry-pick the most shocking stories because nuance doesn't trend. It's not GLP-1s show multi-organ benefit in long-term diabetic cohorts. It's Real Housewives inject mystery serum. The nuance dies in the algorithm, and the comment sections become a battlefield. Meanwhile, people living with obesity or diabetes are watching all this like, cool, so now my medication is a meme. And when the shortage hits because half of Hollywood is on it, they can't even fill their prescriptions. So yeah, people are mad, and they have a right to be. Then we have access and equity. These meds cost up to $1,000 a month if your insurance doesn't cover them. Some people literally have to choose between their metabolic health and their rent. Others get them through black market compounding pharmacies with zero oversight. That inequality fuels resentment and opens the door for unsafe products, salt forms, and dosing disasters. It's not the patient's fault. It's a broken healthcare system that treats metabolic disease like a cosmetic issue. And even inside the medical community, there's division. Doctors argue about who qualifies, how fast to titrate, and whether you're supposed to stay on it forever. Some practitioners start patients too high, chase numbers, and ignore lifestyle support, which leads to miserable side effects. Others use low doses with coaching and see incredible results. The gap in training is huge, and patients get caught in the middle of it. And of course, this whole thing taps straight into morality. Diet culture still worships willpower. So if a medication helps control hunger, some people call it cheating. Meanwhile, the anti-diet camp hears appetite suppressant and sees the ghost of every eating disorder headlines from the 90s. Both sides are reacting to trauma. One from years of starvation disguised as discipline, and the other from being told their bodies were a problem to solve. But here's the truth that doesn't fit into a meme. Biology doesn't care about your ideology. GLP-1s don't give you discipline. They restore a signal that your body lost. They don't make you morally better or worse. They make your pancreas and brain talk to each other again. So yeah, this topic is divisive because it touches every wound our culture has about food, weight, and worth. People aren't just arguing about a drug. They're arguing about identity, justice, and belonging. And I get it. When you've spent your whole life being told your body is wrong, or that controlling it is your only power, anything that changes that belief feels personal. But the real villains here aren't the meds or the people who take them. It's the system that profits off confusion, shame, and half-truths. It's the influencers selling the counterfeit peptides or affiliate codes. And it's the headlines that scare people away from something that could actually help them heal. If we could all just pause the shouting and come back to curiosity, we might realize we're on the same side. All want a world where healthcare is accessible, where bodies aren't battlegrounds, and where science serves people, not profits. So maybe the answer isn't to pick a side. Maybe it's to pick a question. What if we actually tried to understand each other instead of assuming the worst?
Side effects, the real story.
All right, let's talk about the part that freaks everyone out, the side effects. Because if you spent more than 5 minutes online, you've probably seen someone claiming these meds are melting their insides or turning their stomachs into cement. Like, calm down, Brenda, it's not nuclear waste. It's based on a hormone your body already makes. It just finally got a rebrand. Yes, there are side effects, but they aren't mysterious or random. They're what happens when physiology adjusts to a system running under new instructions. When GLP-1 slows digestion, that's actually part of how it works. It helps steady blood sugar and supports longer-lasting fullness. Early on, though, your gut might be a little confused, like, wait, we're doing this now? So food can actually hang out longer than usual. That's where nausea, bloating, or reflux can show up. Your food isn't stuck, it's just lingering. Think brunch guests who missed the social cue to leave. Mildly annoying, but usually temporary. The most common experiences are nausea, early fullness, constipation or diarrhea, and sometimes reflux. These tend to be dose-related and show up most during dose increases. Translation: if you jump ahead on the dose chart, your stomach will absolutely riot. Start slow, go slow, eat smaller meals, chew like you actually want to digest your food, and maybe skip the extra greasy drive-thru on shot day. Protein first, fiber matters, hydration, not optional. Constipation is another common one. Not sabotage, just plumbing. Your colon is moving at a slower pace now. More fluids, adequate fiber, and sometimes a gentle laxative are usually enough to get things moving again. Then there are the less common but louder side effects. Gallstones or biliary issues can happen, especially when weight is changing quickly. That isn't unique to these medications. It's something we've seen with rapid weight loss in general. Sharp pain under the right rib cage after eating is worth getting checked. Pancreatitis is rare, but it gets a lot of airtime because it sounds terrifying. In most reported cases, the issue wasn't the medication itself. It was a gallstone blocking the duct and backing things up. That's like blaming the sink when a meatball clogs the drain. Gastroparesis, where stomach emptying slows too much, is uncommon and usually improves when the dose is reduced or stopped. It's your body saying, this is too much, too fast. That feedback matters. Then there's the thyroid cancer warning, the big black box that TikTok loves to panic about. That warning came from rat studies using doses far higher than what humans receive. Rats also happen to be extremely prone to thyroid tumors in general. After decades of human data, no causal link has been found. The medication should be avoided in people with personal or family history of medullary thyroid carcinoma. For everyone else, the warning exists out of caution, not because evidence shows harm. You might also hear claims that these meds cause blindness. That's not what's happening. In people who've had poorly controlled diabetes for a long time, rapid drops in blood sugar can temporarily affect the tiny blood vessels in the eyes. We've seen this for decades with insulin, too. The medication didn't damage vision. Blood sugar just changed faster than the eyes could adjust. That's why eye exams are recommended for people who already have diabetic eye disease, especially during big shifts in glucose control. There are a few other rare things to be aware of. Mild injection site irritation can happen, and if digestion is really slowed, doctors might adjust things before anesthesia to reduce aspiration risk. That's normal medicine doing its job, not drama, just planning. One real concern that does deserve attention is counterfeit or poorly regulated compounded versions. When the demand surged, some suppliers began selling salt forms or unverified mixtures that don't match the actual medication. Those products can be unsafe. These medications should always come from a legitimate pharmacy, not a social media link or a med spa that also offers teeth whitening. And then there's the part that almost no one warns you about, the emotional shift. GLP-1 signaling affects the brain's reward systems too. So when food suddenly feels neutral instead of comforting or exciting, it can feel surprisingly disorienting. That cupcake that used to flirt with you might suddenly have zero emotional pull. Some people feel relief. Others feel a strange sense of loss, like realizing food was doing a lot more emotional work than they thought. If food isn't your go-to coping tool anymore, it can bring up a very real question. Okay, now what? That reaction is completely normal. It's your brain recalibrating and making space. And learning how to live in that space without panicking or rushing to fill it is a skill. This is actually one of the places I spend a lot of time with clients. Not telling anyone what to eat or how to do it right, but helping people build new ways to regulate stress, process emotions, and feel grounded in their body when food is no longer doing the emotional heavy lifting. You don't have to figure that part out alone. If you take nothing else from this section, let it be this. Side effects aren't punishment. They're feedback. When you move too fast or ignore the signals, things get noisy. When you slow down, hydrate, and fuel appropriately, and respect the process, the system usually settles. These medications aren't evil, and they're not magic either. They're powerful tools, and power requires respect. Used thoughtfully and under proper care, they have one of the most well-studied safety profiles in metabolic medicine.
Myths, misconceptions, and long-term evidence.
All right, time to clean up some of the loudest nonsense on the internet, because a lot of what gets passed around about GLP-1s sounds confident, dramatic, and wildly off base. Let's separate what the research actually shows from what just performs well in a comment section. Let's start with the classic, it's the easy way out. This one gets thrown around so often it's basically background noise. But managing a medical condition is not a character test. We don't call insulin the easy way out for diabetes. We don't tell someone on antidepressants to just try harder at being happy. We don't shame people for taking thyroid medication when their thyroid isn't doing its job. And we don't side-eye someone for using an inhaler during an asthma flare or taking ibuprofen for a headache instead of powering through. Yet somehow, when appetite regulation or metabolic dysfunction enters the conversation, suffering suddenly becomes a virtue. Like white-knuckling hunger, fighting cravings, and battling your own biology is proof that you're doing health the right way. That logic doesn't hold up. GLP-1 medications don't hand anyone discipline or motivation. They help restore signals that have gone offline in many bodies. Hunger cues, fullness cues, blood sugar regulation. You still have to eat, move, sleep, hydrate, manage stress, and navigate your emotional relationship with food. The difference is that your body isn't screaming contradictory messages the entire time. That's not laziness, that's physiology finally cooperating. I get heated about this, Des. And if this were truly effortless, everyone on these meds would be breezing through life without side effects, setbacks, or work. That's not what happens. These medications require medical oversight, patience with dose adjustments, lifestyle support, and often emotional work. If that's easy, we've completely lost the plot. Okay, next one. It's new, we don't know the long-term effects. This one sounds responsible, but it's not accurate. GLP-1 physiology has been studied since the late 1980s. The first GLP-1 based medication was approved in 2005. That's 2 decades of real-world use and large-scale data. What's new isn't the science, it's the visibility. Newer drugs like semaglutide and tirzepatide are refinements of an existing class, not some untested experiment. Okay, here's another dramatic one. It's dangerous. Every medical treatment carries risk, even Tylenol. The question is whether the benefits outweigh those risks for the person using it. When prescribed appropriately, GLP-1 receptor agonists have some of the strongest safety data in metabolic medicine. We're talking lower rates of heart attacks and strokes, better kidney outcomes, and improved survival in high-risk groups. If we want to talk about danger, untreated diabetes and long-standing metabolic dysfunction are far more destructive than the medications used to manage them. Okay, here's another favorite. You'll lose all your muscle. GLP-1 medications don't cause muscle loss. Severe undereating does. When people aren't eating enough protein, skip strength training, or chase rapid results, lean muscle mass can drop. That's not unique to these medications. That's how the human body responds to inadequate fuel. Period. When protein intake is adequate and resistance training is part of the picture, most of the weight loss is fat mass, and body composition often improves. Better insulin sensitivity also helps muscle tissue use nutrients more efficiently, which is the opposite of muscle wasting. And right behind that fear is another one I hear often. Okay, but what about my bones? There's a persistent myth that GLP-1 medications destroy bone or pull calcium straight out of your skeleton. That's not what the research shows. These medications have not been shown to directly damage bone or deplete calcium. What does sometimes show up is a small change in bone density that can occur with any significant weight loss, regardless of how that weight loss happens. Bones respond to load. When body weight decreases, the mechanical stress on the skeleton changes and the bone tissue adapts. That's a normal physiological response, not a drug-specific effect. What actually matters is what's happening alongside that weight change. Adequate protein, regular resistance or weight-bearing exercise, and sufficient calcium and vitamin D go a long way in protecting bone health. When those pieces are in place, bone density tends to stabilize over time. So this isn't GLP-1 harming muscle or bone, it's biology responding to change, and that's expected, understandable, and very manageable when the body is supported instead of rushed. You'll gain it all back. Some people do regain weight after stopping, some don't. The difference usually comes down to how the medication was used. When it's treated like a crash diet, results tend to be temporary. When it's used as a stabilizing tool while people rebuild sustainable habits, many maintain long-term changes. This isn't about performance versus failure, it's about whether the underlying system was supported or just temporarily suppressed. It causes thyroid cancer. Okay, we covered this, but it keeps resurfacing. The warning comes from rodent studies involving extremely high doses and a very rare type of thyroid cancer. That link has not been demonstrated in humans. Caution is still appropriate for people with genetic risks, which is why the contraindication exists. For everyone else, this fear gets repeated far beyond what the evidence supports. It causes blindness. Again, we already touched on this, but it's worth repeating because this one gets wildly misrepresented. GLP-1 medications do not cause vision loss in healthy eyes. What's been observed is a temporary worsening of pre-existing advanced diabetic eye disease in some people whose blood sugar dropped very quickly after years of poor control. That risk isn't unique to GLP-1s. It's something clinicians have seen for decades with insulin and other treatments that rapidly improve glucose levels. In other words, it's a monitoring issue, not the medication damaging eyesight. That's why eye exams are recommended for people who already have diabetic retinopathy, especially during early treatment. Context matters. It's just for rich people who want to be thin. This one hits a nerve because access is a real problem. Cost, insurance barriers, and shortages create frustration. But that frustration shouldn't get turned into misinformation. These medications are approved for serious medical conditions. The issue isn't that people are using them. It's that too many people who could benefit can't access them. And finally, you'll be on it forever. Maybe, maybe not. We don't tell people to stop blood pressure medication once their numbers improve. For some, long-term use makes sense. For others, it's temporary support while their metabolism stabilizes. The goal isn't dependence, it's regulation, and both paths are valid. The long-term data support all of this. Large trials like LEADER, SUSTAIN, REWIND, and SELECT don't just show changes in weight or glucose, they show fewer cardiovascular events, slower kidney decline, and improved survival. These medications affect multiple systems at once, especially the ones that tend to break down together. So when someone says it's willpower in a syringe, it's worth remembering that willpower doesn't improve kidney filtration, protect blood vessels, or lower cardiovascular risk. Biology does. Using medical support for a medical condition doesn't make someone weak. It means they're paying attention.
Lifestyle and nuance.
Alright, so after all the science, the side effects, the myths, and the internet chaos, I want to bring this back to real life. To you. Because none of this matters if it doesn't actually help you live in your body with a little more ease. Here's the part that doesn't get said enough. GLP-1s can support your biology, but they can't do the inner work for you. They can turn the volume down on cravings, they can smooth out blood sugar swings, and they can give your system a chance to breathe again. But they can't heal your relationship with food, rewrite years of shame, or rebuild trust with your body on their own. That part still belongs to you. Think of these meds as opening a door, but not dragging you through it. When the food noise quiets and your body isn't shouting at you all day, there's suddenly space to notice things that you may not have been able to feel clearly before. Hunger without panic, fullness without guilt, satisfaction without the mental spiral afterward. That space is the opportunity. And rebuilding doesn't mean doing everything perfectly. It means getting curious instead of critical. Strength training becomes about feeling capable in your body, not burning something off. Eating enough protein and fiber becomes about supporting your brain and digestion, not just chasing numbers. And sleep starts to matter because you actually feel the difference. Hydration, movement, rest, breathing. These stop being rules and start being support. Medication might amplify the signal, but your daily choices are still the conversation. This is also where nuance matters. GLP-1 medications aren't villains. They're also not heroes. They're tools. Helpful ones, powerful ones. And like any tool, they make sense in some contexts and not in others. Some people will benefit long term, some will use them for a season, some won't need or tolerate them at all. None of those paths say anything about effort, worth, or discipline. And no, they're not for everyone. That's not a failure, that's just reality. Bodies are different, needs are different. The only way to know what makes sense for you is to have a thoughtful conversation with a healthcare provider who actually understands this space. Not a headline, not a comment section, and not a sketchy ad. If you've lived for years in a body that felt constantly hungry, tired, and misunderstood, and a medication finally brings some relief, that's not cheating. That's addressing biology. And if you choose a different path because you're reconnecting with your cues or simply don't need this tool, that's also valid. This isn't about picking sides, it's about picking yourself. Health isn't a moral ranking system. It's an ongoing relationship between your biology and your behavior. And for the first time, we're starting to treat metabolic health as the complex, layered thing it actually is instead of a personal flaw. And if you're like me, and you can't resist a good research rabbit hole, I've got you covered. I pulled together every study, every article, and every interview I dug into while researching this topic and put it into one big, fat GLP-1 research PDF. The link's in the comments. Go explore, highlight things, question things, nerd out, and I even included the studies that weren't great because that's part of learning too. Because at the end of the day,
curiosity is a superpower. It's how you learn to listen to your body, question the noise, and start unveiling the beautiful beast within you.